They had seen war before, on holograms, in simulations, wrapped in tidy graphs and tidy outcomes. But this was different. This was human war. Jatir Military Academy stood like a monolith at the edge of Sector Ver 9, a neutral training ground shared by over a dozen species. Here, war was academic, tactical, theoretical, sanitized by structure and diplomacy. Cadets from across the galactic Concord streamed into the main lecture hall that morning, murmuring in a dozen tongues. They were young, sharp-scaled, feathered, or chitin-clad, but each shared the same gleam of a self-assured pride. They believed themselves prepared for anything. On the raised platform at the front, Instructor Serex, a towering, three-armed veteran of the Scriven conflicts, paced slowly. His scarred facial plates dull in the overhead glow. In today's cultural warfare segment, he began, his voice grinding like stone on stone, we examine conflict methodology from Category Red civilizations. He let that hang. A dozen ears, antennae, and ocular stalks twitched. Specifically, he said, Terrans. Humans. That got their attention. In the center row sat Luktar, a Kelnari cadet with pale skin like carved marble and a posture so rigid it looked painful. He blinked once, slowly. Humans? That rogue race from Sol? He muttered to his seatmate. They still use projectile weapons, don't they? Beside him, Therese, an insectoid strategist from the Rixhive Collective, tilted her mandibles, chirping softly. Statistical models place them below Concord efficiency thresholds, likely outdated doctrine. 2 seats over, Velna, the feathered Avori dreamer, fluttered her crests with visible excitement. They fought for independence from 3 empires at once, didn't they? So romantic, like the old battle songs. At the end of the row slouched Grish, a reptilian Daraxi with a lazy grin and half-lidded eyes. They probably nuked their own planet by accident. Can't wait for the highlight reel. Serex silenced the hall with a wave of his gloved hand. What you are about to see, he said, is raw footage. Real-time combat recorded from Earth's Operation Red Sand. Minimal edits, no commentary. He touched a panel. The lights dimmed. The display came alive. A drone's eye view of scorched terrain filled the screen, wind-swept dunes, blackened vehicles half buried in sand. A subtitle appeared briefly. Sangrathi Dunes, Earth Sector, Classified Engagement, 31st Mechanized. Thunder cracked. No, it was gunfire. Explosions bloomed like dirty flowers. The scene shook with every blast. On the ground, human soldiers in mismatched armor sprinted through smoke. One shouted into a headset, Delta 3 is down! We're falling back! North Ridge! Now! The cam shifted, showing 2 men dragging a wounded comrade by his shoulders, swearing between gasps. Their faces were streaked with blood and grit. One laughed. Actually laughed. You owe me beer, you bastard, he barked as bullets slammed into the dirt behind him. That's twice I saved your ass! Even through layers of armor and filters, their rage, terror, and camaraderie bled through. They moved like a storm, disjointed, unpredictable, improvising with terrifying ease. At one point, A corporal smashed open a downed enemy drone, ripped out a battery core, and strapped it to a homemade launcher with duct tape and twine. "Clear the corridor!" he yelled. And somehow it worked. The blast caved in a tunnel mouth, burying an advancing mech column. Back in the lecture hall, the alien cadets stared in stunned silence. Teresa's antennae trembled. That wasn't standard procedure. There was no logical symmetry. Grish blinked. Was that a toaster battery? Did he just weaponize kitchenware? Velna's feathers drooped slightly. I thought they would be more composed. Luktar's jaw clenched. There was no command structure, no discipline. That's not warfare. That's chaos. Another scene cut in. Night vision, shaky cam, humans huddled behind sandbags under artillery fire. They were singing, off-key, drunk on adrenaline or fear. Possibly both. Then a flash, screaming. One man stood up, bleeding, and fired a flare directly into the enemy position. Teres flinched. He signaled his own location. Why? Serex finally spoke. That was Private Rivas. The enemy had locked onto his squad. He drew their fire, alone, so the others could escape. A quiet beat. Rivas didn't survive. The lights returned. No one moved. Serex scanned the cadets slowly. Humans are not elegant, he said. They are not consistent. They will ignore the plan, break the rules, improvise with unholy fervor, and yet they win, not always, but more often than they should. Several cadets were visibly shaken. One asked to be excused. Two more followed, but Luktar sat straighter, fists clenched. They fight like they have nothing to lose. No, Serex corrected him quietly. They fight like losing is something they refuse to allow, no matter the cost. The bell tone chimed. Lecture concluded. The cadets filed out slowly, whispering among themselves. Some curious, some disturbed. Luktar walked ahead, stiff with tension. Therese followed, quiet, clicking softly to herself. Velna remained seated, eyes on the blackened screen. And Grish? Grish gave a long, low whistle. That, he muttered, was insane. I loved it. By morning, the whispers had become a storm. Every corridor at Jatir Academy buzzed with quiet horror and disbelief. Some cadets claimed the footage was fabricated. Others said the humans were chemically unstable. A few insisted it was psychological warfare, meant to break them. But the footage was real. The chaos had happened. The war had been won. And now came the simulation. Inside Simulation Rassol Room Theta, the air smelled faintly of ionized metal and fear. Velna adjusted the cinch straps on her training harness with trembling feathers. Her normally radiant crest had dulled to a pale grey blue. "I've never seen anything like that," she murmured. "It wasn't war. It was madness wrapped in courage." Grish grinned as he stretched. "If this is madness, count me in. I want to ride a jeep into an exploding aircraft like that one guy did. That was insane." "You mean suicidal," Therese said curtly, her antennae twitching. The statistical survival odds of that maneuver were less than 2.4%. Grish tilted his scaled head. "And yet, he made it." Teresa's mandibles clicked in irritation. Across from them, Luktar checked his weapon settings, his expression unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since the lecture. Their instructor, a lean humanoid hybrid named Enforcer Hovrak, stepped into the center ring and raised a hand. "You four," he said, "were selected for insertion into the Terran Pattern Combat Sim. No rules, no instructors inside, only the protocols of Earth combat. You want to understand humans? You're going to live one of their battles." Velna swallowed. "Which battle?" "Urban Siege. Patterned after Hollow River, Earth campaign 17 years ago." Grish's grin faltered. "Wait! Hollow River? The one with the booby-trapped teddy bears and the rocket-powered garbage truck?" Hovrak gave a knowing nod. "Oh, stars," Grish muttered. The drop was sudden. In an instant, the sterile sim chamber dissolved into chaos. Heat, dust, shouting, alarms. They landed inside the shell of a bombed-out building, flames flickering across broken steel. An enemy artillery drone screamed overhead. Somewhere distant, a woman's voice cried out in a language none of them recognized, raw with desperation. "Shields up," Luktar barked. "Formations, Standard Delta." "No time," Taris snapped, already tapping into the nearest interface panel. "Signal jamming across all comm bands. We're blind." "We're scattered," Velna added. "Something's jamming our optics too. I can barely see 10 meters. Grish peeked out a shattered window and ducked back immediately as a bullet splintered the frame. "Neat," he muttered. "This is nothing like the academy drills." For 20 brutal minutes they crawled through debris, dodged automated turrets, and evaded a half-dozen ambushes, each more devious than the last. Pressure-triggered walls, trip mines disguised as music boxes, even a voice-emulating speaker trap that mimicked Velna's own tone to lure her into Oprah fire. "Is this normal for them?" she gasped, feathers streaked with ash. "Who fights like this?" "Humans," Luktar growled, teeth clenched. But even he was breaking protocol now, firing from the hip, leaping blind through doorways, improvising cover from burning desks and stairwell rubble. Taris, once obsessed with precision, was tearing apart a vending machine for copper wiring. "What are you doing?" Luktar barked. "Creating a pulse disruptor," she said, voice flat. "I've analyzed enemy sensor pings. They're sweeping for movement. If I can spoof heat signatures." "You're improvising." "I'm adapting," she snapped. Grish looked over and chuckled. "Now you're thinking like a human." They took shelter in an abandoned comms tower. Night fell quickly. Velna sat quietly by a cracked window, staring at the simulated city skyline. "There were people here once," she said softly. "Families. Children." "It's just a program," Luktar replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "No, it's a memory, a recreation of their loss." Taris placed her makeshift jammer at the doorway and activated it with a spark. The hum of enemy scans flickered and died. "This will hold for 8 minutes," she said. Grish was silent for once. He glanced at the blood-spattered floor, simulated yet somehow too real. He finally said, "That guy in the footage. The one who charged the tank with a paint can and a plasma cutter. I thought he was nuts. But now, I get it. They all did. Shit." The final ambush came before dawn. Dozens of enemy drones, swarming the building. The cadets fought like they'd never fought before. Not with formality, but with instinct. improvised explosives, scavenged batteries, handheld shields made from refrigerator doors. Grish even lobbed a burning couch down the stairwell, and somehow it worked. They survived. The sim shut down. The world froze mid-motion, then disintegrated into pixels and dark. Back in the debrief chamber, no one spoke for a long time. Finally, Instructor Hovrak stepped forward. "Well," he asked. Luktar stood first. "I understand now," he said. "They don't fight because they're brave. They fight because they have no other choice. They make every moment count." Teresa's mandibles trembled slightly. "They do not seek control. They create opportunity." Velna whispered, "They feel everything and fight through it." Grish just laughed, quietly this time. "I hate how much I loved that." Hovrak gave a grim nod. "Now you see why humans scare entire empires. They're not the strongest. They're They're not the fastest. But when the rules collapse, when plans fail, they're the ones who thrive." The screen behind him flickered once, a still image of a human soldier silhouetted by fire, rifle on his back, child in his arms. Caption: "We adapt. We endure. We overcome." 2 days after the simulation, Jatir Academy wasn't the same. No announcements were made. No memos issued. But everyone knew. Half the cadets who watched the footage, and all of the ones who survived the Terran pattern simulation, had filed resignations or requests for psychiatric leave. Some had simply left without a word, their barracks stripped clean overnight. The human combat footage had cracked them. The simulation shattered the rest. Velna sat alone in the observation garden, her wings tight against her body, feathers drooping under the artificial sun. Once, this place had inspired her with the tales of valor and poetic sacrifice. Now, the wind rustling the leaves sounded like rifle fire. She barely noticed Luktar approach until his shadow crossed her lap. "You missed the tactics briefing," he said, arms folded behind his back. His voice wasn't cold, just tired. Velna didn't answer at first. Finally, she looked up. "I used to dream of being a war singer," she whispered, "a field bard. I thought I'd write great epics of our victories. Now all I see are faces, blood." That little boy holding his sister's hand as the city fell behind him. "It wasn't real," Luktar said. "It felt real," she replied. He sat beside her, the stiffness in his posture softer than usual. "I see them too," he admitted. "Their eyes. Not just fear, defiance. I don't know if I envy it, or if it terrifies me." A pause. Then she asked quietly, "Why are you still here, Luktar? Everyone else is breaking." "Because I need to understand them," he said. "If we're ever ordered to fight them, I want to know what we're walking into." Velna tilted her head. "And if we're ordered to ally with them?" That question lingered unanswered. Down in the maintenance sublevel, Grish hurled a plasma wrench across the workshop. It struck a wall with a satisfying clang. "I followed the damn rules," he yelled. "Top of my class in reactive maneuvers. Passed every module. And then humans show up, flinging trash compactors and duct tape, and suddenly everything we know is worthless." Therese didn't flinch. She knelt over the disassembled comms relay, her talons delicately soldering leads together. Her eyes glowed faintly in the low light. "They taught us to solve for efficiency," she said. "Humans solve for survival." He snorted. "Yeah, by hurling flaming sofas and taping knives to drones." "And they lived." Grish growled but said nothing. Therese looked up at him. "We were wrong," she said, "about everything. Doctrine, predictability, even morale. They win not because they're disciplined, but because they're indomitable." "Maybe," Grish muttered, "but if this is war now, I don't know who I am anymore." Therese didn't respond. She just handed him the relay. "Adapt," she said simply. That evening, an emergency summit was called in the central dome. Sarek stood once again before the assembled cadets. What was left of them? Nearly a third of the lecture hall sat empty. Behind him, the screen flickered with frozen scenes. Terran soldiers in winter gear helping wounded civilians. A child giving water to an enemy soldier. A woman shielding her squad with her own body as artillery fell. "These are not monsters," Sarek said, his voice grave. "They are not beasts, nor are they saviors." He stepped forward. "They are reflections of everything war reveals: desperation, madness, genius, love." He turned to the image behind him. "They are what happens when you take fragile beings, lock them in a burning room, and tell them the door is gone." The cadets were silent. "Some of you believe they're unstable. Others say they're broken. But the truth is, they survived what should have broken them. And now, they've rewritten the rules of war." Later that night, the 4 cadets sat together in the empty observatory dome, the stars twinkling in silent judgment above. Grish was uncharacteristically quiet, fiddling with a hand-modified rifle barrel. Therese was writing equations in mid-air with her claw, mapping out chaos theory overlays. Velna stared at the stars, sketchbook open but blank. Luktar simply watched them all, the tension in his jaw slowly fading. "We were arrogant," Velna said softly. "We thought we knew what war was." Grish chuckled without humor. "We thought we knew who we were." Therese's mandibles clicked in thought. "I reviewed the data again. Across 5 major human conflicts, improvisation increased survival odds by over 30%. Tactics became less predictable the longer a battle continued. They evolved in real time. That's what makes them dangerous, Luktar said, but it's also what makes them valuable. They all looked at him. He continued, voice low. We may be trained, disciplined, but we're predictable. They're not. In a real war, if I had to bet on one side... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The next day, official news arrived. A delegation of Terran military advisors would be arriving at Jatir Academy in 5 cycles. They were coming to offer joint training initiatives. Rumors exploded like wildfire. Would they bring live weapons? Would they teach? Would they watch? Grish rubbed his scaled brow and muttered, Please tell me they're not sending the guy with the flaming couch. They arrived with no fanfare, no honor guards, no planetary announcements. Just a small shuttle that touched down quietly on Pad Centene, its hull scuffed with the grime of real combat, not ceremonial paint. 4 figures disembarked, Terran military advisors clad in rugged gear, eyes sharp. Not one of them smiled. They didn't need to. Their mere presence sent a ripple through Ja-Tir Academy's halls. Even the instructors straightened their posture. Veterans of the Hollow River Campaign. Confirmed. Velna, Luktar, Taris, and Grish stood on the observation platform above the central courtyard, watching the Terrans below as they were greeted by Serex and a handful of brass scale staff. "Which one do you think stormed the tank with the fire extinguisher?" Grish muttered, squinting. "My credits are on the tall one," Velna murmured, noting the heavy scars on his jawline. "No, her," Luktar said, pointing at the shortest figure, an unassuming woman with dark eyes and silent steps. "She walks like she's ready to kill the air around her." Taris, ever precise, had already run facial matches and data queries. "They're all lethal," she said simply. "But 2 of them were medics. Combat medics. That's somehow more disturbing." Grish blinked. "You're telling me healing people was their side job during firefights?" "Yes," Taris replied, "and they were effective." The first seminar was optional. No cadets were required to attend. The hall still filled to capacity. Serex introduced the humans with formal honors. The lead Terran, Sergeant Adrian Locke, walked to the center. She carried no datapad, no notes. She just looked at them. "You've all seen the footage," she said. "You've seen us fight." A few cadets stiffened. "I won't apologize for it. I won't explain it away. We didn't fight to impress you. We fought because there was no one else coming." Silence. Locke's eyes scanned the audience. Then she said, "You want to learn what makes a human soldier different? It's not just tech or instinct. It's the moment everything breaks and we keep moving anyway." She held up a battered helmet. The side was scorched. A bullet hole pierced the visor. "This belonged to Private Darnell. He died holding the line with a dislocated shoulder and 1 working eye. He bought us 6 minutes. That was enough to turn the battle." No dramatics, no soft piano behind her voice, just truth. And somehow, that was louder than anything else they'd heard all cycle. The next week was a blur of joint drills, combat simulations, and problem-solving exercises. But it wasn't like the old academy curriculum. The Terrans broke everything. Doctrine, discarded. Formation tactics, disrupted. Every day the humans threw a new challenge. Half-mapped terrain, ambushes with no warning, simulated loss of command, 0 comms, half gear, and every time the cadets floundered, the Terrans just said, "Adapt." One drill in particular changed everything. The cadets were dropped into a forested ravine, tasked with defending a relay outpost. The terrain was unfamiliar. The enemy forces, simulated but ruthless, used randomized movements. Grish froze early on. The enemy hit fast, jamming all comms. His training said wait for orders. None came. He nearly panicked. Then a voice crackled over a crude radio. Locke's voice. Calm. Improvised. Found a solar repeater. Tied it to a frying pan. Not kidding. Use it. Coordinate West Ridge. He blinked. found a shattered cargo drone nearby, remembered what Therese did with a vending machine. His claws moved before his brain could object. By the time Luktar found him, Grish had rigged a comm relay from thermal wiring and a repurposed toaster coil. Therese dropped behind cover next to them. "That's hideous," she said. Grish grinned. "But it works." And that was the point. Velna, meanwhile, had rediscovered her courage. Pinned behind an overturned fuel sled, surrounded by drone fire, she saw 2 cadets bleeding, simulated but panicked. No one else was coming, so she moved, not because she was brave, because she was needed. By the time the exercise ended, she'd dragged both to cover, patched their wounds, and activated a beacon using a reflective signal from a shard of her own armor. Later, Locke approached her and said nothing, just gave a slow, firm nod. Velna cried in the barracks that night quietly, feathers streaked with oil, but not from fear, from pride. The final test wasn't a simulation. It was a question. In the last session, Locke stood before them with her team. All wore the same grim expressions. She asked, "What would you do if your people told you to fight us?" Gasps. Even Serex hesitated. Locke waited. Grish looked at Luktar. Therese stiffened. Velna blinked fast. "I'd ask why." Luktar finally said, "I'd demand why." "I'd adapt," Therese said slowly. "But not just tactics. I'd adapt my conscience." Grish looked down. "I don't know," he muttered. "But I wouldn't fight the way I did before." Velna's voice was soft. "I'd remember the faces. Yours. Ours. Then I'd decide." Locke gave a slight smile. "That's the answer I hoped for." Weeks passed. The Terrans left without ceremony, just as they came. But they didn't leave empty-handed. A joint exchange program was established. Dozens of cadets signed up, including Velna. Therese filed an immediate request for internship in Terran systems engineering. Grish, once the wild card, volunteered for the Terran Adaptive Tactics Unit. And Luktar, he stayed to teach, not Terran doctrine, human resilience. Months later, a new generation of cadets watched the same war footage. Only this time, at the end, a message flashed in bold script across the screen. "This is not meant to frighten you. This is meant to prepare you." Then another. "In chaos, we do not fall. We become more." The footage faded, and the cadets no longer turned away in horror. They leaned forward to learn.